All right, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. It's amazing to see this packed room. We're running out of seats. What's on the walls. So it's just really awesome that you're coming out here today to listen to what we have to say about climate resilience and join in our conversation. I guess I wanted to start off this conversation by getting some ground rules in our conversation. Just make sure that you're listening, that you're respectful of other people's opinions, that you are cognizant of the things that you're saying, and also your biases and your privilege in our conversation. One thing that we'll touch upon is equity in our conversation and discussion today, and so I think that's really important to consider as we get started. I guess just to introduce myself, I'm Matthew Aubourg. A lot of people call me Matty, so feel free to do the same. A second-year master's student at Johns Hopkins University of Public Health. I study social behavioral interventions, but a lot of the work that I do is really focused in South Baltimore, and also the Mid-Atlantic region, working with environmental justice communities and helping to bring some scientific expertise and consultation to their community identified environmental justice issues. So a lot of community engagement work, but also coupled with bringing science into the conversation and also bringing science to action. So that's a little bit about me. To give some more information about this talk, I think if we're in this room right now or we're on the Zoom room, we all can agree and believe and know that climate change is a threat. It's a threat to human health, it's a threat to terrestrial aquatic ecosystems around the globe. And it engages several different levels of stakeholders and societal levels. I think coming from a science background, it can be thought about as the scientific issue, but it's much bigger than that. It includes science, it includes understanding where science fits into solutions, where it fits into the problem, but also it's important to understand these other levels of engagement when it comes to climate change and climate resilience is what we talk about. Climate resilience is, I think, kind of a buzzword. So we're gonna, part of this conversation, we'll be breaking it down and defining what climate resilience looks like in general, and also in terms of the work that my amazing colleagues are doing in Baltimore. Yeah.
There's a note in the chat that asks if the camera can be turned to the speaker.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, I think the camera.
Okay.
Oh,
Up there. I might be able to turn this one on. Oh.
You could probably roll that.
I'm a little bit hesitant to move this whole setup.
why is that?
And I don't think.
Is it covered with the little?
No, it's not. For some reason, this is one of the IT.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Okay, speakers.
Is that better? Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think this is what we can do right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you for the Zoom participation. I think that's an hybrid meeting. That's all.
Turn on.
Yeah.
That's the escape hatch.
All right. How is this a little better? Okay. Is it good for everybody in the room as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So I guess getting back into this, climate change is often framed as a battle, framed as a war, and we talk about combating climate change, fighting climate change. There's climate change task forces, and when we think about resilience and climate resilience, that's integrated into the way that we also frame climate as a battle. We have to think about being prepared. We have to think about how people who are already, I guess, societally and structurally vulnerable, how they can be prepared to deal with the effects of climate change. And as I mentioned before, these effects are not just about global warming, but it's also about these very on-the-ground community level impacts. And so I hope I touched upon a few of the topics that we're going to talk about in this conversation: equity, with community participation, with the really societally spanning issue of climate change and thinking about solutions in a societally spanning framework of climate resilience. And so I'm gonna stop talking, hand it over to our amazing panelists to just introduce themselves and also talk a little bit about the work that they are doing. And then we'll get into our conversation and discussion. And then the last component will be some Q&A for you all to ask some questions. That sound good to everybody? Head nods, thumbs up. So awesome. Marsha, do you want to get started?
I don't have a loud voice. So is there a microphone on here?
Stand up.
Yeah.
Then I just stand up. Great to see you all. I'm Marsha Wills-Karp. I'm the chair of the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering, which spans the engineering school and the public health school. So it's a unique intersection for these types of studies. I was asked to talk to you specifically today about an effort we have called CHARM. It's an NIH-funded Center for Community Health, and the goal with a homage to CHARM's in Baltimore, of course. But our interest area is all the way from Philly to DC. So we work with communities directly to tell us what their environmental concerns are. So unlike many other government-sponsored projects, there was no preconceived notion about what we would work on. We are going to the communities. We have a monthly meeting with different communities. We've been rotating around different community groups from Philly to DC to get their opinions about what the most pressing issues are in their community around the environment. So far, I'll give you some of the things that most concern residents of Baltimore. Many of them are concerned about the expansion of commercialization and the degradation that occurs to their communities. Climate change is certainly on their radar as well. Other things like noise pollution. Many of these communities are along the harbor. There are massive coal piles which dust just permeates through their communities, exposing them. So our goal is to provide evidence for them of the health consequences of these exposures. So we work with them, catalog their concerns, and then we match them with our faculty who have expertise in those particular areas, whether it be around water contamination, air pollution, and other types of exposures. And then we try to arm them with the necessary data to work with stakeholders, both locally, nationally, and globally, to address these issues. So she's standing up for time limit. So one thing I would like to just say is that each of the things that we're working on are things that will be exacerbated by climate change. The water problems, the contamination of the water system in homes and locally will even be worse when you have runoff and different contamination during climate change. The same is true of air pollution. Air pollution is both the driver, but also a consequence of climate change. So all of these things are just magnified by climate. So our aim is to try to take care of many of these existing problems before they are magnified by climate change or the continuing effects of climate change. So thank you, and I look forward to the discussion.
All right, hey everyone, Ben Zaitchik, Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences, School. And I'm here to talk about another center that is going to start back in September, called the Baltimore Social Environmental Collaborative. It's funded by the U.S. Department of Energy. And when the Department of Energy asked people to put in proposals for this particular call, they said, well, what we want you to do is really do the most cutting edge possible climate science in the urban environment. We need to understand everything about the physics, the biogeochemistry of urban systems and models and observations so that we can generate knowledge to inform climate action. And so we said that's great. So a big partner in Baltimore here, but that's a little backwards, right? What you have to do is appreciate the knowledge is co-generated. And if your ultimate goal is to inform climate action, you need to make sure that you're informing equitable climate action by designing a system of climate science that is responsive to what communities in the city know that they need. And so what we've done is in BSEC, not as clever as charmed, because we're not as clever as charmed, but it's but what we're doing is we are working with our community partners and neighborhood groups, city and other stakeholders around the Baltimore area and saying, okay, what kinds of objectives are we trying to get to in terms of our climate action? And so that includes things like city decarbonization goals. It also includes things like reducing the impacts of extreme heat, air quality exposures, urban flooding, all the things that a lot of us, who live and work in Baltimore know about, and that the communities can define in the terms of what they want to achieve. Like, why do you want to reduce extreme heat? Well, maybe you want to reduce extreme heat because you want people to die. That's a good reason. Maybe you want to reduce extreme heat because you want fewer kids to be missing school because their asthma got worse, right? And these kinds of different objectives call for different kinds of interventions. And so then we can say, okay, having defined what we want to do together, what the goals are, let's collaboratively think about how we measure, what do we need to model to actually understand that chain of events from the climate stress on through the objectives that you care about. And can we measure and model that in a way that allows us to look at what the interventions do? So if you want to have fewer kids missing school because of asthma, it's like, well, what do we need to do on traffic for air quality? What do we need to do on urban greening for heat? What do we need on indoor conditions, right, to make things better for those kids? And through this iterative process of identifying the objectives, working backwards to design an observation modeling system all across the city, we then do a trade-off analysis, see what kinds of potential pathways for equitable climate action exist, work with our partners to look at those and say, hey, that one looks good, this one's way off. We didn't think about this other factor, you didn't measure this well enough, the uncertainty is too large. We go back and we do it again. And we've got about 5 years to get it right and look forward to more collaboration.
I don't go to school here, but I have a quick funny story. I used to live here and I moved here from Trinidad in 1998. Actually used to sneak on Hopkins campus and play soccer with the soccer team, to the fact where I actually made the club and you thought I was a student here. Traveled to them for one game, which we lost, but it was fun. But my name is Chris. I started For My City in 2018. What For My City is we are a nonprofit organization focused on environmental sustainability. The 4 in my name stands for our mission, which is a 4-phase sustainability plan. Phase 1, we work with distributors, farmers, any major food distributor in the world, we have partnered with them. So we rescue, we do food waste audits, we educate them about source reduction, all these different things, right? So a big part of our program is on education. Phase 2 is we feed the hungry. No matter what anybody tells you, you're never gonna stop food waste, right? If they tell you that, they're lying. That has to be straight on. The way we produce food in the world, the way we manufacture food, the way we grow food is always going to be food waste. So the easiest method to do that is to divert that food to families facing hunger. To date, we've diverted over 180 million pounds of food just through food waste. We've not bought any or spent a dime on buying. That's all through food waste, right? When you think about that, that's a lot, right? Phase 3 is what else can we do with food waste? I grew up in Trinidad. We had sugarcane, we had rice, we had all these different wheat products that we grew, right? So there's a ton of waste. So we developed our own line of biodegradable products. If you could make it in plastic, I could make it in biodegradable product, right? So that's what else we can do with food waste. We can make natural gas with food waste, right? Cooking gas. We can make liquid fertilizer. We can make any type of biodegradable product like this utilizing food waste. So that's phase 3. Phase 4 is composting. We've come up with our own unique line of aerobic composters that turns any type of food waste, any type of biodegradable products, any type of organic waste into usable soil within 24 hours. We have the soil tested. We even did, one of your students here did a project on it, which the test results came out phenomenal on our composting, right off our machine, right? I mean that you can regrow the food. So when you think about closing the loop, we'd actually close the loop on food waste, from the source reduction from the farmers to getting it to families facing hunger, which, by the way, if we just divert 10% of the food we waste, we can end hunger worldwide, right? Just the waste, not buying, just the waste of food that we're making, we can end hunger worldwide. That's not a fact, it's been researched, it's by every single organization, it's been published anywhere you can find that stuff, right? I didn't make that up. To industrial use, to, again, composting. That's kind of what we do, right? So, 2 things I want you guys, I'm gonna leave you guys with my last minute. Sustainability is not a role. And we need to stop using that term like climate war, right? Like we're in a war, we're in a battle. It's not a war, it's not a battle, it's a journey, right? It's understanding where we are in society, what we need to get better at to protect our climate. There's no good and bad in climate. The oil companies is not a bad company. The electric company is not a good company. It doesn't work that way. We really need to stop that if we're going to make a difference in the world. It's not a war, it's a journey. We need to understand both aspects and work together on a plan for what's environment. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for introducing yourselves, the work that you do. Chris, I also appreciate your comment on considering climate change as a war. I think there's some things to think about and maybe talk about in that area. But we're going to get started with our discussion, moderated discussion. Like I said, we'll follow that up with Q&A, about 10 minutes of Q&A. So let's get started. So my first question that I posed to you all, moderator, if you want to get started with this. Can each of you discuss how you define climate resilience and how does this apply to your work in Baltimore?
So, I'll stand up. So, working with the engineers, I'm told the resilience really means bringing something back to a beginning state. I'm not sure that's what our goal is. I think we want to live in a world that is different, maybe even than the past. Particularly different so that everyone can live a healthy, productive life. And we haven't been there in the past, and we're not there now. So to me, when we're talking about climate resilience, this just magnifies the problems that we have in inequities, whether we're talking about healthcare, food insecurity, being exposed to chemicals inordinately in certain communities than others. So to me, resilience is maybe finding a better place than we have been, and a place that guarantees every person, and including the environment, better, healthier environment to live in. So we can do this, and to your point, we have a lot of brilliance in the world, and we need to be directing that talent to solving these problems. We can, as you say, make products through the life cycle that can actually be useful and be composted or recycled and not be generating harmful chemicals at the same time. And this is a very economically feasible and preferable model as well, because it costs all of us in this room money to be able to recycle all the things that we put in the recycling. That is not a net zero enterprise, right? So we can come up with solutions for making a healthier world. So to me, resilience is about everyone on the planet being able to live their best, healthiest life. And of course, we care about the environment, and the environment is important to all of us because it generates everything that we need to live: air, food, water. So we need to be cognizant of what we're doing to the environment at the same time that we're trying to better our lives. So life cycle analysis, we have a degree now in product stewardship, which we are trying to engage with corporations around the country to help them learn how to do a life cycle analysis. If they manufacture a product, where does it end up? Is there a better way to manufacture it so that it doesn't just go to the landfill and contaminate the environment and neighborhoods? And I think that there is the technological knowledge out there to do this. So I think as we're talking to our friends, neighbors, parents, loved ones about these issues, to Chris's point, it's not a war, it's just how can we live better? And everybody I think, wants to live a healthier, more productive life. So when you're engaging in conversations, let's talk about it that way. And it's an evolution. It is something we'll need to be working. It's not going to happen overnight. But we can be part of that solution. So I hope you all feel that you can be part of that solution and are interested in joining the team to get to that place where we can survive on this planet in a way that the planet survives as well as us, and that we all are healthier in the long run. So, thank you. Yield to Matt.
Thank you. Yeah, and I also want to emphasize that this is a, feel free to piggyback off of each other. This is a discussion. Can everybody hear us from sitting here?
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess we can I think we can just probably keep it here and keep our discussion here. Anybody else have any want to respond to my question? Happy to repeat it.
I mean, in my view of climate resilience, it's very simple, right? It's basically just coping with current conditions in climate change, managing our current systems, and understanding what we need to do better moving forward. That's like simplified climate resilience, right? Like understanding where we are right now. And that I feel is the like biggest issue we have in society right now. People don't understand where we are, right? We're so projected into the future of the damage that could happen that we forget that we're here today. Let's deal with what we got to do with today. And then managing that process, right? What we tend to do is we come up with this great plan, right? And then somebody else revisits this plan again next week and says, you know what? I don't like it, or I don't like this part. So let's scrap everything, let's redo. So always in this planning, circle of planning stage, right? We see it in cities across the world, right? We see it right here in Baltimore, right? And we never move forward with anything, right? My belief is you start simple, right? You start with what you can today. And eventually you would join in, you would join in, you would join in. And as we go along, we navigate the plan, right? We don't know what's going to happen with climate change. Nobody can predict it. Sorry to say, right? That's reality speaking. Nobody, right? We didn't know that it was going to be a final, and somebody just said, we don't know what's going to cause it, right? So, but instead, what we're going to do is we're going to shift tens of thousands of dollars in resources to try to figure that out, right? And that's what we're doing constantly in the climate change around, is we're just constantly attacking one thing instead of saying, you know what, let's just stick to the plan, stick to the basics, and systematically, all these different things would fall into line. We react to flooding, we react to hurricane, we react to stuff, right? And then we go crazy, overreacting. Whereas if we just build the infrastructure systematically, when all these things happen, we'll be in position to do it, right? And I say this because like when I launched for my city in 2018, right, we had a rescue program set up, right? We had distribution programs set up. When COVID hit, every other major food bank shut down. You know what For My City did? We distribute food in 18 states across the US. You know why? Because we had the infrastructure in place, we had the network, we had the connections, we had the system in place. So nothing changed for us when COVID hit, right? The way we distributed food, the way we moved food, the way we rescue food, all stayed the same, right? Whereas food banks were buying foods when the stores closed down, guess what they couldn't get? They couldn't get anything, right? Food banks were, distributors were donating food to us. So when the stores closed down, guess who they still called? Chris, we have food we need to donate, right? So again, build the infrastructure, and that's your resilience. That's your roadmap to resilience. Build infrastructure, focus on infrastructure, don't focus on the plan. Focus on just infrastructure to create a system that will build the resilience.
Yeah, I think it's both excellent, really well stated points. So the only thing I'd add, building on that, is that I think you're talking about infrastructure in terms of your systems and your physical infrastructure, things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that when we think about resilience, sometimes terms come and go, right? And right now, resilience gets some critique because it's like, oh, you want my community to be climate resilient,
Right.
when the entire system's built against it. Like, right, so you just don't, using resilience in that sense is not useful. But think about a network as well. It's a human network and shared responsibility. That's what we're working for, is resilient society, right? That are equitable and lift people up. And so then we don't get this challenge of like, oh, do we really need resilience? Like, do we really want that community to have to deal with a flood when really what we should be doing is not having the flood? It's like, well, it's all, let's just talk about it as a network resilience as opposed to whether one term is more appropriate than the other.
Questions? Do you want-
I have a question to Chris. Chris, I was wondering, what do you think about plans for development of urban growing food? And especially like, for example, when you see in California, there's a lot of new effort to develop what they call vertical farming, indoor farming. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that?
So vertical farming is important, right? Because we have to understand land quality and what we're dealing with right now with climate change. So again, this is where it comes back to understanding the situation of what we're doing, right? So at Former City, and I'm going to put the cat out the back here, we are developing urban agriculture. It's a hydroponic system that's a container stack that you can stack at 20 high. It utilizes our compost to regrow food from that whole cycle, and it's 100% solar power. Right. So it's important to understand that. But it's also important to understand that an urban farm, like let's say, for instance, an urban farm in Baltimore, I did a study recently, an urban farm in Baltimore is growing kale, right? For the entire year, it cost them $95,000 to grow 2,000 pounds of kale, which is one pallet of kale, right? 2,000 pounds, $95, right? I can go pick up one pallet of kale right now in 5 minutes at a local produce distributor. That's going to be trashed, right? And it will cost me $17 because that's what I pay my truck driver, right? Maybe $5 in diesel, right? So understanding urban culture and the effect that it's going to have, and then understanding how our current food system is very critical. I believe in urban farming. I believe we need more green spaces and stuff. I just came back from Germany. And Germany has a really cool system where if you have an apartment complex, they rent you a little piece of urban farms in these little areas. People have their shacks, they have their gardens, they have their chickens. And my fiance was like, she was like so amazed, like that's all I wanted to see was these urban farms. I don't understand this more. And she was like, so much other things to look at in Germany. You're so attracted to the guy with chicken. And I'm like, but but that's what cities should be doing, right? We have so much empty plots in Baltimore and we tear down the houses, and until they develop, if we put an urban farm in there, how much beautiful our city would look, how much more food we can put in different communities. So again, understanding where we're at and creating these systems can help, yes.
Can I add to that? So our Center for a Livable Future focuses on healthy food systems, and it's a multi-pronged approach. With 8 billion people on the planet, urban farms aren't going to feed 8 billion people. But we can do better at the industrial type farms. We shouldn't be using such toxic chemicals. We should return to farming more naturally. Single product farming is terrible for the environment.
Yes.
It's not good in terms of needing to use pesticides. So there are better ways. We need to improve the systems. But all of us in this group can also contribute by our food choices. Okay. We cut down on red meat and other things which cause 30 to 40% of greenhouse gas emissions. So we can make a difference. So that doesn't work in every country and every society because of what's available and the need for protein and other things. But in this country, I think, we could do better in terms of our food choices. Also thinking about from farm to table, what are the energy costs of getting food from where it's grown to halfway around the world? Maybe we have to give up eating exotic foods from Australia to be able to be more sustainable in our food systems. So there are many different things we can do to improve and to provide food for more people. And the waste is a huge problem. But also the farm bill in the US that leaves a lot of land unused, and also storage of food that could be distributed to people. So there are many different ways we can address food insecurity and the potential effect that climate will have on food insecurity.
Thank you all. Thank you for the question as well. I think I want to come back to Baltimore. I want to ground our conversation and our discussion back in some of the initiatives that are going on in Baltimore. One thing that Chris, you were talking about is when we think about resilience, it's not just about planning ahead, but also building upon infrastructure that's already in place. I think in Baltimore, when I think about community work, I mentioned that that's some of the work that I'm helping to contribute to. There's already a lot of ongoing community-led and community-driven efforts for food waste, for sustainability initiatives, for mitigating and adapting to the impacts of climate. So I guess one question I would want to present to you all is, where does the work that you're doing fit into the landscape of work that's already ongoing? And how does it build upon infrastructure systems and or infrastructure initiatives, especially community-driven initiatives that are already in place?
I mean, we're for my city, so we're distributing food, we're rescuing food and distributing food in the city of Baltimore. Our headquarters is on Monroe Street, like right close to the United Way headquarters. But we distribute food across the U.S. When needed. So we rescue food. We put out about 100,000 pounds of food every day in communities. We have two unique programs that we just launched. One's called Food Rescue to Go, where any family can sign up. It's free service. We actually deliver the food right to their homes if families are facing food insecurity at no cost. What this program does is we reduce food waste, right? So the food that we're sending out is food that we rescue. So they get it daily. Two is, we're helping people end hunger and create economic stability in their homes, right? So now they don't have to go buy food or buy certain items that we're sending them. They can spend that money somewhere else to better their lives. And then three, we utilize DoorDash drivers, right? So these drivers are already floating around the city. They're already creating carbon emissions. So we just put the bags in their cars and they go. And we're creating supplemented income now for them because they get paid by the bags they deliver, right? So this is what we call about building a system that can create sustainability, right? When I look at sustainability, people say environmental. I use that word, but I don't like to use it, right? I believe just sustainability is a word we should use, right? And when we think about sustainability, I break it down into different categories, like social, where we can talk about sustainability in open forums and not bicker about it, right? Economic, where sustainability should be used to help you, not cost you more money, right? All our services are free, right? We give out composting bags, we give out free stuff. Like we're doing free composting for the entire city of Baltimore right now, right? That's free, right? We don't believe sustainability should cost anything, right? It's free. We're saving the planet, it should be free. You have diplomatic sustainability, and diplomatic sustainability goes towards more like government and corporations, where we see the corporations argue, right? Sustainability corporations are arguing with the electric corporations, like Tesla is arguing with GM. Shouldn't work that way. Should have diplomacy and everybody going towards one goal, right? Meaning that if GM is coming out with electric vehicles, Tesla's all their charges should be work or should compare, right? Should be in that competition in the space. Solar power companies should work together. Oil companies should invest into solar and all these different energy sources, right? And then, of course, environmental sustainability. So those are the four categories that I believe encompass sustainability, right? And then environmental is really what can we do to mitigate climate change, right? There's only certain, there's always going to be 50-50 split on this, meaning that there's only 50% of the population is going to say, you know what, I'm giving up my gas-powered car, right? Another 50 is going to say, yes, I love electric, right? So, you have to be able to meet people halfway and understand the impact, right? So finding your offsets. Okay, Mr. Smith, you're going to drive that car. I need you to compost your offsets of that, of the gas that you're driving, right? And challenge people that way. And that's what I mean by having, social and diplomatic sustainability is really for people to work together to understand this. In Baltimore here, we're trying to build a system, right? By creating the jobs, by creating sustainable practices for families, free composting. When you think about composting service, it's $35 for the cheapest one I found in Baltimore, right? When you think about a family living in inner city Baltimore, can they afford $35 when they're already shopping for food and they have their food stamps taken away? They can't, right? So these services should be free to families so that we're going to lead into this, but equity, right? So that we can create an equitable system, right? In sustainability. So these are things for my city we're battling. And we work with every single, nearly probably about 50 different nonprofits in Baltimore, come and pick up food from our residents. So like local churches, community service organizations, they even come and pick up compost to plant in green spaces and stuff. So when you're building a system, you want to encompass everybody. There's no competition. If you want to copy our stuff, if you want to copy everything for my city's doing, I'll give it to you in a piece of paper. You can just go mirror it in whichever community you want. Because the more people that are doing what we're doing, is the better off society is going to be. So it's not competition for me. I don't care. Copy away. I'll give you every single piece of my technology, every single piece of information. Because I want you to copy it. Because the more people are doing it, the better our society is going to be. That's why we partner with so much organizations. They have access. Anyone here can walk into my facility any day of the week. We're open and participate and see our technology, see our operation any day, right? There's some students who visited our site, right? So, and that's what we call about creating an equitable system. There's very few banks you could do that to. There's none, right? There's very few compost facilities right now that any person in this room just walk into. You can't. Doesn't work that way. You got to make an appointment, and if they like you, they'll invite you in, right? It doesn't work that way. If we're gonna tackle climate change, it has to be open forum, open for discussion, open for improvement. That's why I invite people into format, because when you come in and you point out something that I'm doing wrong, guess what I do? I improve it. And we have a lot of great minds in here, right? So the more minds that can look at my project and evaluate my project, is the better my project is going to build on.
So following up on that, I live sort of part-time in Seattle. And in Seattle, compost is part of city services for everyone. So my message to everyone here is, let's push the local government to make that citywide, statewide service. Trying to put you.
But how are you funded?
So we're a nonprofit, so we're funded by donors like you that you're gonna donate after this, $20. But yeah, we're funded through grants. When I started for my city, it's me. I had businesses in Baltimore. I grew up here in Baltimore. Baltimore gave me everything that I have. I love this city. It's like in my heart, built in next to my home island of Trinidad. But we're funded through grants. We're funded through in-kind donations, and a lot of the startup costs was on me personally. But right now, we have a lot of foundations that love our work and are invested in what we're doing. So
Maybe FIFA could be a sponsor for your soccer.
hopefully, we were signing a deal with MLS Stadium.
I'd say if I can stand there quickly from the Hawkins perspective, like the people in this room, right? So I think a lot of what Chris just pointed to is so true that, it's always hard. It's hard for some people to work together, right? But in Baltimore, there's amazing energy. I think that all of us know about, like at the community level, these organizations that really are bringing together great things. So what are some of the things that Hawkins can do? It's like, well, one thing is quantifying benefits. So like if someone like Chris, like you're thriving in what you do and just list it off, you rattle off a ton of benefits. And decision science take notes on that, right? Like all the different things you're doing, but how are we quantifying that? Like how can we, if you then turn to funders, right? Or turn to the state with a case for a new policy, like, can we really quantify all those benefits and not just look under the street light at like the two things that we know how to count right now? And so at Hopkins, I think that one thing that we're doing with our project is saying, how do we quantify these diverse objectives and benefits, work with communities to understand all the good that they kind of know they're doing, but how do we elevate that? And then identify how these networks are creating good. And so that's one thing that I think we can really do, all of us in this room, like to help to really, really value these things. And then a counter that, again, just speaking very specific to folks in this room, it's like, we all have our own capacities, we complement each other, and we're part of the Baltimore network, right? It's not like, oh, there's us and then there's Baltimore, right? It's like, no, we're all part of this. And so it's like, well, what are things that we might be able to do? It's like, you know what? We're networking our own, we have our own skill sets. And so when I'm working with some of these community groups that are doing such amazing work, and then it's like, but they might not have the access points to be able to say, well, here's how I could better get funding, or here's how I could quantify the benefit in a way that makes the case, right? That connects me to resources, that scales me from my neighborhood to the city, right? And so we brokering those relationships, doing the writing with that people, like helping to pull that together is part of the role we play.
Yep, exactly. So, one of the things one of our interns did last year, so we have an internship. Anybody wants to come do the internship for the summer? to understand, right? And I challenged my intern to evaluate our programs, right? So last year we had an intern from Stevenson University, and he came in, and this video is on my YouTube, but he did a video graphic of the study of what Form ICT done, right? So he went through, he studied the impact of everything that we rescued. So we rescued over 215 million pounds of food, including our distribution and stuff, right? That's over 294,000 cars taken off the road, right? Over something about a metric tons. The numbers are slipping right now, but metric tons of carbon dioxide that we've mitigated, right? Stop, right? So, and these are things that, you know, Hopkins students like you guys can do, right? But we have one of your students here come in and evaluate our compost, right? Did our compost comparison to a on-site compost comparison, and gave me that breakdown in the report of how our compost lined up with a facility that was processing it for over 90 days, right? So, you know, these are things that you can do, is work with these local nonprofits, because look, I'm not a genius. Half of you in this room is smarter than me. I would, you know, that. But what I am is, you know, I understand business, and I came from like the streets, right? I always tell people I have street knowledge. So a lot of things that we do for my city is just hands-on. I drive the truck, I understand all these different things, and then I get people to evaluate my program that are smarter than me, right? So I put people around me that do these things. So, you know, look at these different programs. There's so much community organizations in Baltimore that need your help. And when you think about volunteering, it's not just volunteering and say, let me give my time to go pack a bag. If you come to volunteer for my city and you're smart in data stuff, you're not packing a bag in my facility. Sorry. You're sitting at the laptop and watching what we're doing, and you're creating a spreadsheet for me and say, this is the impact that you're making, right? Like, you know, we have students right now evaluating from Hopkins, right? Evaluating the new building that we're putting up, right? We're building a new Form City headquarters. It's going to be the first ever 100% zero waste facility in the world, right? Because everything that goes in there would be composted or recycled, right? So, and they're evaluating all our construction, how we're making it, the products we're using, everything. And it's being done right here by students. So this is what I mean by how you can volunteer time with organizations in this climate realm, right? They're going on the street and holding up a sign saying, stop climate change. That's not helping. They're going into an organization that's doing the work and saying, let me help you advance your strategies by giving you some understanding in the work that you're doing. That's what's going to make the difference.
So we also invite you to get involved with Charmed. We meet with the communities once a month. It's open to anyone who wants to attend. And we have opportunities for students at all levels to get involved with projects with the community. And we have such a variety of projects that I'm sure would interest many of you. So if you're interested, just who has the contact? Let Maddie know.
Sure, no.
And there's many different types of projects that you can get involved with and work directly with community groups. And we have 40 or 50 different community groups that we're working with. So there's bound to be something that, you know, is of interest to you.
Right.
And one thing that we have promised the community is that we are here for the long haul. We are not just here for this month, but plan to sustain this. And that's what they want to see from us, that we're not coming to the community, doing our studying, and then never coming back. No, we are committed to seeing through each of these problems that they have brought to us. So we need your energy, intellect, and your passion to work with the communities.
So city government is very tough, right? You know, and that's our challenge. You know, with them, similar to I guess, right? They have to contract, they have to bid, they have to do all these different things. So that's the challenge with city government, and that's something that we're trying to overcome. You know, through legislation, through things. They're saying, guys, look, this program's happening, right? Open up the way the city, do things differently, and that's the biggest problem with climate change initiatives. And cities and government, right, is there's so much rules and boundaries that is tough. So yeah, going into schools, We offer free composting. I can do free composting for every school in the city if they'd allow me to, right? And it really doesn't cost me much. And that's the beauty about it. Like the Hopkins here, it'll probably cost me $100,000 and do composting right on the school campus here, completely free for the next 15 years, right? So, you know, but there's so much rules and regulations and so much red tape that you have to go through that it's difficult. And that's something that we're working with to try to overcome right now, yes.
There's also correction. Fire churches.
Yeah, I mean, we did, you know, I know the mayor of New York, you know, we did major distributions in New York for COVID. And, you know, recently, half of you maybe see in the news where the hotel was just throwing away food. And he brought me up there for a week just to kind of evaluate that, address some of those issues. So, I mean, we are working with certain city governments, city leaders. I mean, Baltimore here, we kind of do the same with local, you know, leaders. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge because, again, you still have that divide in the room where one group wants one thing, the other group wants something else. So until, like I said, it's not a war. Until we understand that climate change is a journey and we're in this together, like that's always going to be a challenge.
All of you kind of mentioned the importance of engaging in conversation with the community, and I'm wondering what your biggest insights and how you kind of frame and communicate about sustainability in climate change in a way that's important to the community.
I have to say, in my experience with the community so far, they are knowledgeable, engaged. They just need partners around certain aspects of it. So, of course, we're only seeing the people who are interested. You're probably talking about speaking to the broader community. So, one of the other goals of CHARM is education. And so part of what we're doing is creating fact sheets for specific topics that can be distributed within the communities. But we also are going to have a summer program for high school students to get them involved, teach them about the concerns, what they can do, but also hopefully lead them into seeking additional education, because we think that part of the problem in Baltimore is poverty. We need to create an avenue for children to get out of poverty. And education is going to be one piece of that. So we're working on with the community at very different levels. But I think that I've just been amazed at what they are doing already. And it's really exciting to be involved. But I would say that they are very welcoming and they want Hopkins and other communities to work with it. I think that's the same spirit. So I think there is no shortage of opportunities to get involved. And we can share with your student groups the list of all the partners that we have.
Yeah, to add to what Marsha said, and also I recognize we're running out of time, so I'm going to wrap up. But when we think about climate resilience, and especially at a community level, these we're I guess in our conversation we're kind of talking from a higher level. We are kind of on the outside. If we're thinking about some of these on the ground impacts of climate change, particularly in communities that are already vulnerable, which includes many communities in Baltimore. These people are living with the impacts every day. That's why they are so energetic and so ready and so knowledgeable about these issues and these impacts, because they live with them. And in a lot of cases have lived with them for generations. And so as we as Hopkins students, Hopkins faculty are engaging with communities and engaging with climate resilient initiatives that are already ongoing in the community, we have to come with that understanding that this is about people's lives. This is not just about getting a publication out or about being able to do a presentation, but there's life-changing work that's ongoing that community organizations are already doing, as Marsha mentioned and as Ben also talked about. And in our engagement, it has to reflect that understanding and that appreciation for the work that's already going on. And so I guess circling back to what Chris started out with in his introduction, or in his response to the first question, and we can be involved in building upon infrastructure and building upon initiatives that are already here trying to, here in Baltimore, trying to prepare their communities for a climate resilient future and a climate impacted future. And so we're here afterwards if you have any further questions or want to get connected to community partners and to use some of your experience, some of your skills, things that you're learning in class, things that you've learned in class. I don't know where you all are at right now, but we have an opportunity to make change. And that starts with asking questions, getting involved, and also caring for others. I think that's really where a lot of it stems from, at least for me in my work and thinking about climate resilient work from a community level. Yeah, we're wrapping up, but I hope that this was a useful, a really enlightening experience to learn about some amazing work that's going on from these three folks and their organizations. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to come up to us afterwards. And thank you so much for being here.